all of you, welcome to X-Men 92 to 97. It sounds like 5 years, but it's really 31 years. When we all four were working together on this show, we're dropped in the deep end of being told, let's do an X-Men show, and didn't realize what a challenge that would be. And so here today we're going to represent the original show because we all worked on it, and the new show because we're all involved in it, are our rogue. X-Men writer Supreme, my lovely wife, Julia. I'm Larry Lewald. I was the guy in charge of the writing. The gentleman in charge of the art for the show is beside me, Larry Houston. And Larry put together a PowerPoint here with a few fun things in it, including a visit by one of his main colleagues on the show who did so much, including some of the artwork in this book, Rick Holberg. So I'll leave it to Larry now for the next presentation.
Okay, and that's the team, the X-Men. You know, for a long time I had this drawing put together and I couldn't put Beast in it. And the actor, George Busa, was asking me, where's my picture? I said, you're too damn big. So he said, I'm always hanging upside down. Why don't you put me upside down? I went, oh God, that makes perfect sense. So that's why you got that group shot the way it is. So I was able to get everybody in there who are on an active team. Obviously not Xavier, but you know, those are the guys that go out there and beat the crap out of people. So here is something you guys, let's see, come on, start.
For those of you that don't know, Larry and his buddy, longtime buddy, Will Minio, drew that whole thing.
Yeah.
2 drafts, boom, boom.
Yeah, first time when I drew the opening, I drew about 3 minutes, and I did a different style, and between Will and Margaret, I said, let's go for the, everybody running, make it more action-oriented. And so we took the 3 minutes, called it down to like minute 3. And Will did the beginning, and then I followed up with the rest of the images. At some point, I'll show you, maybe if we have time at the end. There was a logic to all the images that we did pick. Anyway, that's Will Minio. There was 3 of us who got the show on the air. It was Will Minio, Rick Holberg, and myself. We're all 3 fanboys who grew up with the stuff, and by accident, we got into animation and became directors. And so the merging of those 2 different talents allowed us to do the X-Men for you guys, to do a show that was actually respectful of the source material. And also we knew how to do animation and make it work, because there's a lot of production problems you have to overcome. So between the 3 of us, we were able to put together the show that you guys enjoyed. So that's Will, and that's some of the stuff he's worked on. I don't know who that guy is, but that's me. I've worked on several shows, directed about 12 different shows, and I was a storyboard artist in several. And the next one, that's my other partner, Rick Holberg. He was an art director and fanboy like the rest of us. And he's a real good guy. We all came up as fanboys back in the 70s and got into animation in the 80s. Rick was a very heavily influenced Star Wars fan, but he also loved Marvel Comics too. That's back when I had hair, I was half my size. And that's Rick, that was at the Spider-Man's Amazing Friend rock party. That's 82, 83, man. We're ancient now. But Rick has, he's not able to attend some of these conventions anymore. He's got the Parkinson's disease. It's under control, but I asked him, did he want to say something to the audience? So he put together a video that I'm going to show you right now. And hopefully it plays. There you go. You might want to turn up the volume. It's kind of recorded low.
Hi, Larry. Good to see you again, buddy. I hope that Julie and Eric are there as well. It's always good to say hi to the Lewalds. And most of all, I want to say hi to the fans who have, over the last 3 decades now, made X-Men the animated series one of the most timeless and beloved shows in all of television history. It says so much about our X-Men show that when the time came to revive it, instead of beginning all over, Marvel and Disney made a hugely wise choice to do something previously never done with a show of this sort, by picking up the story right where it left off, with the same characters and the same voice actors. In the early days of Marvel Productions and the show Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, my 2 amazing friends, Larry Houston and Will Mineo, and I began dreaming of, then conspiring, to get the X-Men into that series. By the end of season 1, we made our case, and someone, I believe it was Stan Lee, pointed out it would make for logical origin story material if Firestar was a mutant and it started out as an X-Man, or X-Woman. That uncanny team of mutants returned twice more during the 3 seasons of Amazing Friends. Some 5 or 6 years later, the studio approached Will, Larry, and I about creating an X-Men pilot episode. Pride of the X-Men was very well received. When our once studio chief, Margaret Lesh, became the head of Fox Kids, X-Men TAS was greenlit, quickly becoming a hit. That was truly the beginning. Now, with X-97 coming in just 1 month, and an MCU live-action version to follow in another year or 2, I, for one, am ready for all new adventures and a return to the roots of the X-Men. See you at the X-Mansion, kids.
And that's the pilot that the 3 of us, Will Mineo, myself, and Rick, we put together back in the mid-'80s. Was Pride of the X-Men. It was based upon the Dave Cochran version, and it had Nightcrawler, Colossus, Kitty Pryde. That was the version we did back in the 80s to get it off the ground, and we were really so proud to do that. And the lady behind it, Margaret Lesh, believed in it so much that when she became the head of Fox Kids, she hired all of us to do the show.
Oh, before you leap from that, I just want to point out, you and Rick and Will and Margaret all had the best intentions of the X-Men at heart, but there were people above you who didn't quite get it. Do you want to tell the folks about Wolverine's Australian accent?
That's an indignity I'll live. When we did the show, the people who were funding it to get this little pilot off the air, they looked at there was a show popular at the time, a film called Crocodile Dundee. And these investors says, hey, why don't you make Wolverine Australian? And we were like, oh my God.
Oh no.
And we said, okay, we bit our tongue. We said, okay, it's just a pilot, so if we do it series, we can get rid of that and make it the way it should be. So unfortunately, yeah, so that's where the accent came from. We had our hands tied behind our back. And we had to compromise. Now, fast forward to when we were doing the show in the 90s, Will Mineo, myself, Rick, we learned from that mistake. And so when they asked us, it's in his book, both of these books, when they asked us to make compromises to the integrity of the X-Men, we all stood up and said no. We all said, if you're gonna do that, we all quit. And we made them back off, and that's how we kept the integrity of the show. Let's see, what's the next? Oh, we're gonna do the voice actors. That's our Mr. Cyclops, who is Norm Spencer.
These folks look a lot like their characters.
Yes, yeah. That's Cal Dodd, our Wolverine. I think you know her. That's our Storm. That's our Beast, George Reza. Oh, one thing about the boost I forgot to mention. In the first X-Men film, there's a truck driver that drops off Rogue for the case.
That's George.
That's George. He's the truck driver in that episode, in that movie. And when they hired him, they had no idea that he was an X-Men. He had to tell them, you know, they had no idea who they had. That's Chris Potter, obviously our Gambit. There's Jubilee. There's I Got a Headache, Captain Bishop. But she did an excellent job. Once we came finished, she kicked everybody's butt. And our Nightcrawler. And everybody's favorite, Morph. A little side thing about this character is that he was in one episode. We had no guarantee of a season 2. When they told us we had a season 2, they did a survey, said, which is your favorite character? To a bunch of kids. Guess which one they picked? He was in one episode.
He was supposed to die at the beginning of the second episode. He did die at the beginning of the second episode. He was supposed to stay dead as a heroic sacrifice, and how much all of our X-Men grieved for him as a big deal in kids programming to do that. And then, yes, we finished writing and drawing the first season and finished recording it. We were waiting for it to come on. We're all let go because they don't have the salary to keep us around for 3 months while this thing gets animated. And then it shows for a week or two, and then, oh my God, we have a super #1 hit. So they start asking kids, why do you love the show so much? And they asked a room full of 9-year-olds. And said, who's your favorite? I said, oh, Morph's our favorite. So the same executives that allowed us to sacrifice Morph in the first story, 2-part first story, called up and said, I'm so sorry, but is there any way we could bring Morph back? So that was how he came back damaged with PTSD in the second season.
He was supposed to stay there.
Wasn't a big
But the
switch.
actor Ron Rubin was very happy to hear you tell me that.
Yeah, he yelled at us, he said, look, they have 13 episodes, I have 2. Where are my paychecks?
Yeah, when he saw himself die, it was like, he saw all of his paychecks fly away. Oh, man. Let's see, the next one is, our bad guy. This is good. And another guy that you might know, his voice, John Felipe's Mr. Apocalypse. He passed away, a while ago, but he's like, with his voice and the dialogue these guys wrote, it's like timeless. This is the next one is the group. This is the group that we put together on the show. The whole group, almost all the whole group's there. Writers and production people. And let's see if I can get in closer. The next one, that's them. She is the lady, Margaret Lesh and Avia Colburn were the key to making the show work. Margaret was my boss when we did Pride of the X-Men. and she became the CEO of Fox Kids. She believed in the show from way back when, and she's the one who hired us all to do the show. Adria Colburn was the person most people denigrate, like, oh, that's a censor person, and stuff like broadcast standards and practices. But we got lucky. She came from live action, not Saturday morning.
And she liked she understood the comics. She really appreciated it.
Yeah. So she allowed the crew of writers to actually push the envelope, you know, and allow us to, you know, do stories that weren't being done at the time. So we got lucky yet again. And this guy, you might remember, Chris Claremont. We finally met him maybe 10 years after we finished the show at a convention, and he had a lot of great words about the shows that you guys wrote, episodes, and he really was a fan, and he asked for one of your hats.
Well, so he wears one everywhere.
Yeah.
When you see Chris at a con, he's wearing an X-Men hat.
Yeah.
As he said, I am previously on X-Men.
This is the book over here. This is that Eric wrote, and basically he interviewed all of us. You know, he tortured us for bringing up all of our memories that we had put away and put it in the book, you know, and everything. But it's all there in both of these books that he wrote. And we have another fan in Canada. The Prime Minister of Canada is an X-Men fan. That's Cal Dodd, Wolverine, and the one on the right is Allison Court, now grown up. Jubilee giving him a copy of the book.
Justin Trudeau named his first son Xavier, so I think he got it.
And I actually got to work with Prime Minister Trudeau because I ran for politics in Canada and was elected 4 times continuously. And I got to go to Ottawa and work with Prime Minister. So I can say he's really excitedly looking forward to X-Men 97. Some of his sons.
Oh yeah. This next slide here is it's an example of a lot of the cameos I was able to sneak into the show that you guys spotted here and there. You know, the Spider-Man hand was something I had tried to put Spider-Man in the first season and they took it out. So the next time I got a chance to sneak him in, I got that hand in. And they didn't realize what it was. I just called it a mutant arm. Yeah. But yeah, I was able to get a lot of the cameos that you see there. There's a lot more, but you know, the ones that when I did that, I never called them their original name. Like, that's a mutant magician. The Black Panther's African mutant number 3. So that's how I was able to incorporate a lot of cameos that knew that if it was fans who saw it, who were watching the show, they saw it, they would instantly recognize who the characters were. But if you weren't familiar with the show, it would just go past you. But I did it for all of you fans because I used to be a fanboy.
They were right over the head of the legal department. They didn't know what they were letting Larry do.
And Larry, is that Jackie Kennedy?
Oh, it could be. Let's see. The next slide is just something my bucket. Let's see. Oh, there it goes. That's my bucket list thing. The drawing on the left was the very first Marvel drawing from my bucket list. I had never in 60 years had ever gotten anything published in Marvel. And they asked me to do a variant cover. And so those two are the first two. It's like, yes, I made it. Now the next thing I have coming up, which is going to be involving Lenore, was her battle with Ms. Marvel. I think you just recently met her at one of the conventions, right?
Yes, yeah, we had a reunion after 30 years. The original voice actress who played Ms. Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her because she was up for one episode, so I didn't go up to Canada for the Rose recording. So.
Well, Well, the actors, we didn't even get to meet any of you guys until we started doing some Comic-Cons. So we met maybe 5 years ago.
Yes.
At a Comic-Con.
For the first time.
Yeah, for the first time. And so we're a family. You know, we're a family. We're so happy to see each other and come to Comic-Cons together and meet the fans. But you were voices in our headphones, right? And
Yeah.
when we did our auditions, you guys were in LA listening to us while we were in Toronto doing our auditions and then recording. All we would ever hear is the notes from you guys.
Very guys, yeah. Yeah, the finding Lenore was like a miracle because she didn't want to do the audition.
I was busy doing movies and television and theater.
And we had all of these people coming in to do Rogue, and we just didn't hear her voice. And when her agent finally, said, go to it and
With the callbacks.
do the callbacks and say something. So we're in LA, we all have to listen to everything, and then she gets in, she reads about a couple of lines, and we all went, read some one more time? Read it again and said, I'm gonna leave the room.
I know, and I remember seeing the drawing. I came in and I saw the drawing of Rogue with her hand on her hip, just, with a real sassy attitude. And they had said they were looking for a woman with a low, husky, sexy voice who could do a southern accent. And I played a few of those characters on camera already. And so I remember the lines distinctly. It was, my daddy liked to kill himself when he found out I was a mutant. A little monologue, and it was, I remember I had me a boyfriend when I was 13. Had me a boyfriend till I kissed him. Poor boy went into a coma for 3 days. That's so if I touched anybody, it just drove the life right out of them. I don't know, Beast. You know everything. What makes us like the way we are anyway? And that was it. How many producers in Los Angeles shriek? That's how.
Yeah, we just said, don't let her leave the room. Oh, we got her. Look, you had to be contained, but we.
The rest is history.
Yes, it is. I have a little excerpt from when you were fighting Miss Marvel. It's a little snippet, I think about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Did you guys?
Let's-
Let's see.
Where are you? Go away! You have no business here! Let go of her! I've been waiting a long time for this, sister. This is only happening in my mind. That's exactly why it's real. When I defeat you here, your mind and body will be mine. You don't understand. If you destroy her, you're both finished. Better to have an end like this. Oh! You took away everything I had. Everything I ever was. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. Sorry doesn't give me back my life. This ends now. No! I'm sorry.
Now, this is in her mind, right?
Sorry.
They had me put air holes. Children's television. Yes.
It's over. Rogue's okay. What are you doing? Sorry, Steve. Use your pitiful tricks on somebody else. I belong with the X-Men now. Xavier's gone. Only I can help you. Only I could ever help you. You never loved me. You only cared about my powers. You made me worse than a killer. How can you do this to me? I raised you like my own. I ain't your daughter, Mystique. Not anymore.
Yeah.
It's interesting watching it again now with everything that we know about mental health
Yeah.
and mental illness. And, you know, when she says, well, this is just happening in my mind, Rogue says, it's just happening in my mind. And she said, well, that's what makes it real. And that's something that I think a lot of people who suffer from PTSD or trauma, mental health issues, anxiety, depression, you know, yeah, it's all in our mind, but it's also very real. And I think the show speaks on many levels to people who are suffering from different types of trauma, and I think that's partly why it resonates with so many people. For instance, when I first started getting fan mail, it was a lot of people who were in war zones, actually, or soldiers who were on ships in the Middle East, who would write to me and say they were watching X-Men on board, and that they were really relating to it, and that it made them feel better just watching our shows. So I'm sure that they're and even with Morph, you know,
Right.
as it turns out, there's so many different universal themes in the shows that people can relate to, and today they can relate to them sometimes even more than they did 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. And the one thing I when I talk to fans who I've met at panels, they said the one thing, a reoccurring thing that I've heard is that they were able to watch the X-Men with their family members, with their parents and stuff, and it really brought them together, and they were able to talk about issues in addition to being entertained by the shows that we did.
Right, and so it's nice to meet fans today who say they're introducing their children to the show. So they were fans when they were kids, many of you, and now they are parents, and they're excitedly waiting to watch X-Men '97 with the next generation.
Yeah.
And we look at it that we are all family here. We are the X-Men community, and it's growing because so many people need to know that they are okay, and that it's okay to be different, and that they're not only accepted but appreciated, and that our differences are what makes us stronger. And we know that message has to get out all around the world today, right? Too much hatred out there.
So I think we've got about 20 minutes left. I think we should start getting into some questions.
Yeah. We got about 20 minutes left, so we can start a Q&A.
Okay. Gentleman in the front row.
We talked a little bit about it when you were on our podcast about how you were a woman in the writer's room. So the show was surprisingly inclusive and progressive for the 90s, because I was a 10-year-old when the show came out. Being a Korean American kid growing up in Indiana, a town of 30,000, seeing the first character be an Asian American girl being thrown out in an arcade, very relatable. And also the first action we saw was from the female mutants. So I think that's part of how it aged so well. And also Rogue was portrayed as like not dumb. I think that's important too, representation on all sides.
Yeah.
Did you receive any pushback from anybody about that at that time? To be more entertaining and kind of fall into like these like caricatures?
Interestingly, we've all, three of us have been involved in dozens of shows in Hollywood, and 8 out of 10 times certainly on a boys action show, we get a lot of pushback to be more traditional, 6 Smurfs and a Smurfette, and token this and token that. But you gotta remember, the lady behind all this, whose baby this was, who had hired us all and trusted us all, was this incredibly powerful, ambitious, focused woman. So she's not gonna be upset that we ended up with half the team being female. She's not gonna be upset that maybe the 2 strongest members of the team are female. All those questions that would come up in a normal, development meeting, where the people are rolling their eyes and saying, well, the toy company wants to focus on the guys, and whatever those happen all the time, right? Never came up for X-Men because and we didn't even do this on purpose. We didn't pick 50-50. We just picked the 8-9 most interesting X-Men we could find out of the 29 that had been X-Men from 1963 to 1992.
So give credit, as we all should, to X-Men, the original source material, because that's where you guys got to draw from the picking of the characters to be on this particular X-Men team, and the fact that those characters have been created already, and those female characters have been created and been allowed, if I can use that word, to be as strong and as powerful as they were. And again, with Margaret Lesh in charge, being encouraged to explore all that in this environment in 1992.
Yeah, one thing you guys should, I always like to try and thank the original people who watched the original shows in '92. I have to thank you for it because there was, back then, even though Margaret Lesh is a CEO of Fox Kids, there was no guarantee of season 2. And they thought everything we were doing was wrong. Because back then, the successful show was either Scooby-Doo or Super Friends, and that's not what we wanted to do. And so they didn't think the show was gonna survive past season 1. But you guys kept the ratings at the top. You know, see the Power Rangers or X-Men for a whole year.
I want to hear about the theme song. Like,
Oh.
Ron Wasserman had, like, you guys have one of the most iconic theme songs, you know, in the history of cartoons. Yeah, so, like, what are your thoughts on that, and, like, how did it start?
Our thumbnail sketch of that is that he was hired, he was on staff at Spawn Entertainment, and Saban would immediately admit, Saban would admit, he just did everything on the cheap. He would have thrown out a theme song in an afternoon and, oh, that's fine, whatever. He didn't want to spend too much money or too much time. Well, Ron was a little bit more perfectionist, and then Sidney Iwater and Rominio, and probably Larry, were listening to every version Ron would come up with and pushing. That isn't X-Men enough, that isn't rocking hard enough, you don't understand. This is gonna be triple the pace of Super Friends or whatever the things you're used to writing for. So Ron was pulling his hair out, he's like, okay, here's version 20, you know, is there enough tracks on this for you? And finally, it was to where you guys liked it.
Yeah.
And Ron was relieved, but here's the thing for him, he did that and he did Power Rangers, and he was just a guy on staff, he just got his salary. The executives got he didn't get he's played tens of billions of times worldwide. And not to Ron's financial benefit. And I don't think he got credit on screen. I think one of the executives took credit for this.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. So the
All
version,
credit to him, Ron Wasserman,
yeah.
Is
So
he
the version,
still around today?
He is.
Oh,
Is he?
yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
I hope he gets credit on the next one.
Yeah.
So the version that you guys love and enjoy was not version 1. It took a lot of versions to get it out. But to contrast that, when he did the Power Rangers, he did that over a week. He did that like, boom, he said, that came out, it came out really fast with the X-Men. We were on them. But he knew what we wanted, and we finally got the one that you guys all enjoy.
Yes.
When the first movie came out in 2000, did someone come to you for consultant or something like that, or because as a fan, I thought like when it was coming out, it was gonna have something out of the animated series.
The long and the short of it is that Hollywood is very segmented and very pigeonholed, and people, oh, you work for an 8 o'clock sitcom, you can't write for a 9 o'clock sitcom.
Yeah.
So the idea of talking to animation writers about a movie is pretty ridiculous. However, they were having, the true story, they were having trouble with the script on the first movie, and they were getting close to going into production. And some of the people were really telling them this is the next venture. So Margaret Lesh, who knew the people in the movie division, sent a copy of the script to me. Larry, you got one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to Will Minio to say, there's some worries on this. Is this as bad as people are saying it? And so they got some free advice. I gave them 5 single-space pages saying, okay, here are the general notes. If you want more specific notes, this could take me a week. But yeah, this is not an X-Men script. You really need to work on this. So we each gave it one shot. And they did 3 or 4 more revisions in the meantime.
Not with you.
Not with us, not with us without paying us, but I think Joss Whedon did a version and a couple other folks did a version. And by the time it came to the screen, you know, probably 15 people worked on it. David Hayter got the final credit because he probably did the most work there at the end. But the beginning and the end of it is they and the director spent their time watching our show. They did not spend their time reading the comic books. The director never picked up a comic book, he just watched our show.
Yeah.
So that is, we feel very much, we laid the foundation for the X-Men movies, and that's just, they all admit to that. It's not like we're grabbing credit or anything, but yeah, we give them one set of notes, and thank goodness that first, they're not the X-Men until the last 2 minutes of the script, of that first script. They're just random people bouncing around and meeting each other, and it was not.
Yeah.
I'll also say, they had the same 30 years of X-Men comic book lore to pull from. They chose the same team that you've chosen to be on the animated series.
Right.
Yeah.
With the exception of not using Jubilee and having Rogue, which hey, it's a great movie, but
Yeah.
I still miss my Rogue.
We miss our Rogue and we miss our Storm. They didn't really do much with it.
And Gambit.
Yeah. And the music team.
But I think, to be honest, I think that the Rogue in the X-Men movies, they seem to make her like a mixture of somewhat Rogue, but Jubilee as well. Because she was kind of always needing help and Wolverine and, Wolverine helping her. So it seems to me like they were going for a demographic of younger audience members. And they just sort of morphed her into this combination, which isn't really the Rogue of the animated series.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay,
So, I know you guys can't really talk too much about it, so this is more like your opinions. Do you guys hope to see Gambit and Rogue more closer? Because throughout the show, it's like that's the best thing when Gambit is smooth.
That's a sneaky question.
Yeah, we hope to.
We hope to, yeah.
We got to see them kiss in season 2 on in the Savage Land.
Yeah.
Rogue and Gambit were my favorite moments.
Yeah, we finally said he loved her.
No, he says, Gambit, love you.
Gambit never said this to anyone before. Yeah.
Gentlemen in the back.
Yeah. X-Men is a property that's based on a lot of real world themes. What do you have to say to people who want to not have politics in their X-Men?
That's,
It's not the X-Men.
Yeah.
As when you've been a politician, I would say that's not the X-Men. Or anybody who says, oh, the X-Men's too woke. Where have you been?
In the back row there.
I do want to say thank you because I was one of those kids that grew up watching every Saturday morning, and I really loved at the end of every cartoon where it would have you guys characters spinning around.
oh
like,
yeah.
Are you guys gonna do that in the next one?
We have a story about that. Will Minio, his buddy, you know about him creating those.
Yeah.
They only lasted about 8 or 9 episodes that we put the spinning character at the end. We got the attorneys came down on Will saying, "Oh, this looks like a toy commercial."
Yes.
So they made us stop doing it.
Yeah, that's why we have to go away.
Yeah. We want toys.
During deployment, I grabbed the bootleg copy and watched during deployment because it did help that. So my kid's gonna be watching the night.
How many episodes of the new series, and what is the likelihood of more than the current order?
If I told you how many episodes in the new series I'd get beat up by a Marvel attorney. How weird is that? But we can tell you, they have finished. They're planning on having 97 premiering this fall. And then Marvel had an overall look and said, we've got so much stuff coming out, we need to spread out a little bit so each thing's had a little more time to run and be marketed and everybody, they don't run into each other. So they deferred it to sometime next year, which is close to.
Yeah, it's all the decisions being made up the food chain. We have no idea.
But we can tell you that they loved the first season full that was ready to show this fall, and it's basically done. That they're already writing and producing the second season.
And the new cast started voicing the second season as well, so. We're gonna love it.
In the new series, can we anticipate Wolverine kind of, you know,
Not allowed to say. No comment.
We can just say he's there.
There's a hand in the back there, red, in red.
Yeah.
So, you guys pick like iconic X-Men stories like Age of Apocalypse and Age of Future Past, but for some of the lesser known stories, how did you decide which stories from the comics to put into that?
Okay, real quickly, Julia gasped at that one because there's a fascinating story about Age of Apocalypse. They decided to do Age of Apocalypse after they saw our script for an episode called One Man's Worth. Right. So Bob Harris, who was in charge of all their books and was the man behind all the Age of Apocalypse, which is a huge, wonderful thing, was out visiting us in December and talking about what the new stories are. And we gave him this two-parter and said, look, what would happen if Xavier, someone went back in time and killed Xavier next to never were. It's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life. And we had a wonderful writer named Richard Mueller who was writing it up for me. And Bob said, this is great. I'm going to run back and maybe we can do some comics on this. And it took so long to animate the show that by the time the comics started coming out about 10, 11 months later, Larry was still working on the storyboards.
Yeah.
And he took some of their art and he thought, oh, this is a great kind of crossover. He took some of their artwork. But the truth, because this is the controversy on the web, the true story is we came up with the full story for One Man's Worth first. That inspired them to do Days of Apocalypse. And then Larry took some of their artwork
And put it in the show.
and put it in the show. So it was back and forth and back and forth. But the nice part is, after taking so much material, inspiration from the books, it was nice to be able to give a story back to the books that we came up with ourselves.
Right.
Far right, get there.
We saw a case that Forge is going to be in X-Men 97, but any chance that any of the other members of X Factor might show up, like maybe Multiple Man?
No comment.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, you gotta try. You gotta try.
Not allowed to say. There's a few hands over here.
Oh.
Yep, lady.
Hi, so it's amazing when the show's coming back after all this time. I was wondering how that is for you. Were you approached? Did they approach you? Is this something you want? And like, what's it been like coming back to it after all this time?
Want me to go first
Sure.
on this one? Okay, so I stopped acting for about 12 years and went into politics. And after my last term, I was not reelected that last term, so I did 4 terms. And then we had the pandemic. We had a terrible mass shooting in my community. It was the largest mass shooting in Canada's history. My niece, who was 17, died. She had died of cancer. It was one of the worst periods of my life. So I was feeling really depressed and very, very, had PTSD really from all of it. And I was kind of going, what next? What do I do now? And suddenly I got the message that these folks in Hollywood were interested in talking to me about something, a show. And I was like, is this for real? And I said, if this is for real, then here's my phone number, get them to call me. And it was Meredith Blaine, who was the casting for this new series. And she said, they're very interested in hearing to see whether or not you might be interested in doing this show. Would you mind doing a few lines and recording them for us and sending it to me? And I said, sure, And so she sent me some lines and I was like, these are my own lines from the original X-Men. Oh, okay. So I did them, I sent them off to her and she wrote back and said, okay, they want to meet with you. And I did a Zoom meeting with Bo DeMeo, who's the producer for the show. And it was like we were home. It was like we were kindred spirits. And they were fans of the show, and fans of my character, and they were like, Lenore, we would love you to come back. We're gonna reboot the show, and we'd love you to come back as Rogue. And I was like, yes, please, sign me up. So it's been an amazing business. Very good.
They're like 130-year-olds been working for over 2 years making this new show. They're doing all the work, but they were respectful enough to call us about a year and a half ago and say, we're doing the show, we all love your show, we'd like to have you on as our first audience. So we're consultants, they'll write a script, they'll produce an episode, and they'll send it to us and we'll give our comments on it. But so we're involved, we have credits, we're part of the event, but 99.9% of the work is being done by these young folks that grew up loving this show.
Yeah, like the writers, the directors, the artists, the producers, they're all huge fans of the show and of the comics, and they want to do it right, and they want to make sure that the fans are happy. So this is great. Larry has been asked to do the credits at the beginning of the show, right? You do the credits.
Larry's gonna.
Oh, you go for 97?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
97.
Yeah, I was surprised they called me to direct the new opening for 97, so I was you know, I can't tell you what I directed. I can tell you it looks really good.
Of course it does. Over there.
Last question.
Thank you. So question for Larry, why was it so hard to get cameos in? Is it a licensing issue?
Legal.
It was all legal. The company that was putting up the money for X-Men, Marvel wanted to make sure that Saban never got their fingers in any of the ancillary money they were making, like T-shirts and stuff. And so, unless there was a contract put up ahead of time, like when X-Men debuted in Spider-Man episode, they did a crossover, there were a lot of contracts signed way ahead of time, so that Saban couldn't get any of that money. Now for me, because I tried to put Spider-Man in and they kicked it back. So when I did these other cameos, I never used their real names, So African Mutant number 3, a mutant magician, he's not he can't really set claim to those. So that's how I was able to get it through the system, partially because they had no idea what the hell they were looking at. And by using the wrong names or generic names, it protected the Marvel from Saban to get their fingers in anything.
From like toy sales and other...
Yes, exactly.
And Marvel was going quickly bankrupt in the 90s, and they sold off a bunch of the rights to Sony, to Fox, but they sold it over half a dozen of their major people around other folks, so we couldn't use any of them because they sold the rights for Spider-Man for $1 million. That's how desperate they were for a little cash flow.
They continue to keep the franchise by just paying Marvel $1 million for the franchise. That's it. All the rest of the money they get to keep. They got it on the cheap.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. If you have any questions, we're at booth 326, 324, and
G61G or G61. Come on and see it.
Come down, we'll cross the door.